Today we'll be looking at painting Pox Walkers for Kill Team and 40k. So these are the Pox Walkers from First Strike. They've been assembled, based with sand and rocks and undercoated green. I'm going to start with a wash of Athonian Camo Shade on the flesh areas. This is just to get a base coat down for the necrotized flesh of these little zombie fellas. So this is a really quick stage. And you can see just how quickly you start getting some colour on the model. So I'm making sure to get the head and including the bottom of the fungus spike growths coming out of them. So you can see from this that it does take shape quite quickly. So I'm going to put this near a light to help dry it a little quicker, and then I'm going to come back with the next coat. With that ink wash dry, I've got some dark brown, so you can use Mornfang brown. In this case I've used a Formula P3 paint called Battlefield Brown, and I'm just going to pick out the equipment pouches and the belt like so, as you can see here. And doing this gives a definite change to the colour. So we've got another colour down, and in a minute I'm going to come back and I'm going to do the trousers. So I'll be back in a second. So with the dark brown dry, I've got a little Mephiston red to put on the trousers. So at this stage, if you get a little overspill, it's fine because you can go back and neaten it up. But where possible, always paint quite neatly. So you can see here, suddenly we've got most of the leg done. So we've got this little band here, but I know I'm going to be coming back and picking out the little metal hoop when I come back and do the metal parts. So I'll be back in a second. I'm now going to apply a coat of lead belcher to the weapons and the buckles. So there's only a couple more base coats to go before I start applying more washes. So this broken knife, this mallet, and these little buckles. So I'll come back in a minute with this all finished, ready to do the spines, and after that start hitting the model with more washes. I'm going to apply a little bit of Balthazar Gold just to this little fly icon, because we're at the point where just before we start hitting with even more ink, I'm going to go out and pick a couple of the details out. So I've now got a little bit of Xandridus which I've thinned with a little water, and it's time to pick out these fungal horns, but also things like the maggots. So I'm going to go over the whole model, do all the fungal horns. And you can see how we are almost at the point of having all the base coats done. So it's now at a standard where if you wanted to, you could put it down on the tabletop. I am going to keep going with more ink washes and more detailing. Now the last stage before the washes are applied, I'm picking out the boils on the body. So with the larger boils you may need to apply 2 coats. Remember that with these they're often in 3s, and make sure the paint is properly thinned down so it will thicken under the lights in a situation like this where I'm filming it. But you want to avoid putting thick paint onto the boils. It's better to use 2 thin coats than it is to put it on too thick. You will have some tiny little boils. If you go a little too much on those, don't worry, because the ink will pick that back up. But you want to make sure that you break up the tone of the skin by picking out plenty of the boils. So once I've done that, and I'll also pick out the teeth, in the grin, then it's ready to apply the washes to the base coats. But of course, if you wanted to finish it with the boils picked out, it's a reasonable tabletop standard and you just need to base it. So I'm going to come back with the boils finished to do the inks. I'm now going to apply 2 ink washes, one of Nuln Oil to the metallics and one of Agrax Earthshade to the clothes and the fungal horns. I'll also put a little bit of Agrax Earthshade on some of the larger boils. So I'm going to shake it, take a little Agrax Earthshade from the lid to give me a little more control over how much I'm using, and then I'm going to start painting it onto the clothing to give it that grimy look, because these models should be dirty looking, should look like they're in a war zone. They're not parade clean. Everything about them should be a bit grimy, a bit grotty. So I'm going to go over the fungal horns as well. Particularly these bits where it joins the skin. A little bit here with the larger boil, and a little bit on the maggots, just to add a little definition to them. And a little bit in this internal guts bit. Making sure to get the belt as well. And the bits of the trousers poking out above it. So that's done. Quick wash. Close this lid, because the last thing I want is a big wash spill. and do exactly the same thing with the Knoll oil on the metallics. So if you've gone a bit heavy with the wash, you can go back and use the brush to take some of it up, as you've just seen me do. Don't hesitate to get in and on these metallic bits here, add a bit of Knoll oil. So that is those two washes done. I'm going to leave the models dry for probably about 20 minutes, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to start looking at some additional detail heading towards finishing it. With the first two washes dry, we're going to apply some Druki Violet, and this is just going to be to the sort of tentacly areas and to create a bit of bruising on the body. So just to split up the green of the skin a little bit. And give you a bit of visual variation. So a little bit of Druki Violet, and then I'm going to do exactly the same thing with some Caribou Crimson. So again, picking out some areas just to add a little bit of different colour to them, and throwing a bit on the tentacles. Again, to give the tentacles some different colouring. I'm also going to apply a little Caribou Crimson to the fly pendant. So after this we're really getting into the detailing territory, and it's going to be detail on the stomach and the face, the base, and some highlights. So I'm going to pop this down to let the wash dry, and I'll be back in a second. We're going to start to put some coats on the base. So this is just Mechanica Standard Grey to start laying down a mid-grey tone. I'm then going to hit that with a coat of Knoll oil and leave that to dry. So I'm now starting to apply some highlights to the metallics, and this is going to be where the model starts to come together. We've got the base coats done, we've got the inking done, we're going to apply some detail, there's going to be some blood in the guts, I'm going to do the eyes, I'm going to do the mouth, and I'm going to finish off the base. But we're getting there. You can see how it's at a standard. You can put it on a tabletop and it'll look okay. This stuff is all extra in order to make the model look even better. So I'll go through the highlight stages, I'll show you finishing off the base, and then we'll be done. So at this point I'm going to add a light dry brush of Celestra Grey to the base. So I've got some paint on the brush, I've wiped it onto a tissue, and I'm just doing light strokes onto the base, which brings out the sand and the stones. So at that point the base is done and I can just edge it with black. So I'm going to do that next off camera and come back and then keep doing the highlights. I'm now going to apply a little bit of Citadel Technical Blood for the Blood God. I'm going to do so straight from the pot. and I'm going to use a fairly small brush to do it. So I'm going to get these horrible internal organs coming out of the gut and get a good bit of it in there. Also, I'm going to put a bit inside the mouth. So also I'm going to treat these bits here as popped sores and put a little in there. So this is a fairly quick stage. You just need to use a brush and a steady hand, and you can get all of that in easily enough. So these popped sores on the back, I'm going to have a little blood coming from them. This popped sore on the front, again, a little blood seeping from it. And yeah, so again, leave that to dry for a good 10 minutes. And we're going to come back in a second with the next stage of details and highlight. Now I'm going to apply a light dry brush to the fungal horns of Ushtabi bone. So as you can see, a light dry brush brings this out pretty nicely. And gives you this effect. So I'm going to come back in a second and I'm going to do a light dry brush on the skin. As pretty much a final highlight before I finally do the eyes, I'm going to apply a very light dry brush of Screaming Skull. So I'm going to do this across most of the miniature. Including the fungal horns, the face, even the wood bits. So I'm doing so to add a bit of definition back into the model. Particularly on the face. So I might hit this wood with another brown wash, but apart from that, maybe a little corrosion. Yeah, apart from that, what I'm going to do is the eyes, and then I'm done. Finally, a little flash gets yellow for the eyes. So this will draw attention to the middle of the face. So this is quite a bright yellow. So in a minute I'm going to hit it with a wash as soon as it's dry of the Caribou Crimson, which is going to add a little red ring to the outside of it and make it more bloodshot and unpleasant, like so. And there we go. So I regard this model as now completed. There'll be a few bits and bobs that you could go and do a little more of if you wanted to, but that's a tabletop standard that I'm happy with, and I'm going to hit it with some varnish and be putting it on a gaming table in the next few days. So if you've liked this video, hit like or subscribe. If you feel strongly, leave a comment below, but otherwise, good gaming!